One, two.
Oh, great. Hi,
Oh,
welcome to the
great.
Video and Vinyl Club.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Video and Vinyl Club.
Welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I'm Emmy Wildwood. I am a musician, a producer, a songwriter, a juggling of all the life things or multi-passionate. And this is my incredible idol, my American Idol.
I laugh, I
Aaron
laugh.
Mars.
Thank you, Emmy. And I am a writer, director, and a seltzer taste tester.
Oh, yes.
I just realized I found this new seltzer from ShopRite. It's a ShopRite brand seltzer.
Oh,
This
good.
flavor is coconut mango sparkling water. Très bien. 10 out of 10. Love it.
Do you know about my like seltzer problem?
What's your seltzer problem? You can't drink them?
No, like I have a problem. Like it's my new addiction. Like I love the burn of a
I
crispy
understand.
ass seltzer.
I know. I know. I like it crispy too. Yes. So thank you for that lovely introduction, Emmy, the wonderful, beautiful, talented, intelligent genius of a woman you are. And let's
Oh,
jump in. So let's tell the folks what we are talking about today. You want to hit it?
yeah. So a few weeks ago was Erin's birthday. She was turning 21 and a half. And so she came in,
Hmm.
so she came into Manhattan. And we went to the movies, our favorite thing to do. And we went and saw the Led Zeppelin documentary. And we had heard really good things about it. So we were excited to see it. And it's called Becoming Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
So it's about a period of time before they were really, really famous, really how they got to where they got. And anyways, we have lots of thoughts about it. But Erin, you were asking me, am I a fan of music documentaries?
Yes. Are you a fan of music documentaries? I know sometimes people either want to know more about the artists or want to hear more of the stories about stuff, like that VH1 series Behind the Music, which was super popular back in the day.
Mhm.
I found it fascinating, but I think often there's like film music docs that can either really go well or
Mhm.
not. And so,
Yeah,
but I think everybody kind of has strong feelings one way or the other. So
yeah.
what's your take on it?
Well, if that's true, then I would say I generally really, really like them.
Mhm.
I loved pop-up video and behind the music. I loved that
Oh
stuff.
my gosh, that was so great.
I mean, I feel like that's why we're doing this documentary. This is why we're doing this podcast because we both love to know more about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Although when you asked me that question, I could only think of like four right off the top of my head, which I mean I've seen I'm sure countless, but like
Yes.
some of the most impactful ones like right off the top of my head are one when I saw when I was younger,
Yes.
which was a compilation. And this is
Yes.
before AI voice in it or anything like that. It was a
Hmm.
compilation of Kurt Cobain's interviews, tape recorded interviews from different reporters or interviewers, music
Yeah.
journalists, put together to tell sort of the story of his life.
Yeah.
And so it was from his own mouth. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it was like to this day, they don't talk about anything that he said in that documentary. It was the most informative documentary. Like he's telling like the most deep inner secrets, and it's very tragic, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Sure.
But it was so impactful. And yeah, so it made me think of it was one of the first times it made me truly understand the difference between what the media wants to perpetuate and the
Sure.
truth.
Sure.
Mm, because he wasn't like, he's a self-admittedly flawed human being, far beyond the drug addiction. He felt very guilty all the time. The other one was Amy Winehouse's documentary that,
Hmm.
because I saw that kind of recently, broke my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I liked biopics and stuff too. Like What's Love Got to Do with It?
Yes.
Recreation. Like I loved these
Yes.
movies. So yeah, I think I really love them. Can you
Yeah.
think of any off the top of your head that stayed with you?
Yes. The Decline of Western Civilization Part Two.
Oh
I
yeah.
love that documentary.
Just part two though.
Just part two. And it's about it's been credited with the downfall of hair metal. It's just like a time capsule of seeing people in the 80s and guys who are in bands or, wanting to be famous, and some actually who have been successful, and the whole lifestyle and culture surrounding music and the LA music scene at that time. And people talking about how important it is to flyer, and, kids in high school wearing chains and like spikes and thinking that's
Yeah.
like super punk and all this stuff. I just love, love, love that documentary. I think part of it is a little bit interesting because it's kind of tongue in cheek, but some of it is very, very on the nose about how over the top that scene was.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
it's like tongue in cheek, but not like it's
yeah,
like ironic, but it's them being totally genuine. Everyone
yeah.
being interviewed, but
And
it's
it
like
completely,
ridiculous. Yeah.
completely. And it came out and it was like right as grunge is like starting up. And then everybody's looking at these like hair metal guys like, you are such a joke because it's just insane. But
Hmm.
anyway, I love that documentary. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. That's the one that kind of comes off the top of my head when I think about those type of documentaries. But I do generally, I think biopics are interesting. You can learn different things about the artists that make you either like them or don't. But like you were saying before, in regard to Kurt Cobain and really any artist, there is like a marketing that goes along with how we know these people and how we don't
Hmm.
know them,
Hmm.
which leads us perfectly into becoming Led Zeppelin. Now, this documentary, which came out this year in 2025, it was directed by Bernard MacMahon. Now, he is a Irish British filmmaker. His big accomplishment is the American epic films, which are widely considered as the definitive portrait of a musical era and are one of the best music documentaries ever made. Now, he basically debuted American Epic, which was an award-winning documentary film series about the first recordings of roots music in the United States during the 1920s and their cultural, social, and technological impact on North America and the world. And he directed that and he co-wrote that. And the story was told through 12 ethnically and musically diverse musicians who auditioned for and participated in those pioneering recording sessions. So the Carter family, the Memphis Jug Band, Elder J.E. Birch, the Williamson brothers, Dick Justice, Charlie Patton, the Hopi Indian chanters, Joseph Kekaku, Lydia Mendoza, the Brew family, Mississippi John Hurt, and Blind Willie Johnson. So the film series was created, written, and produced by him and Allison McGorty and Duke Erickson. And it was broadcast in 2017 in the United States and narrated by Robert Redford. So
Whoa.
it was the result of 10 years of intensive field research and postulated a radically new take on American history, namely that America was democratized through the invention of electrical sound recording and the subsequent auditions the record labels held across North America in the late 1920s, which were open to every ethnic minority and genre of music. The films contained many previously untold stories and a vast amount of previously unseen and extremely rare archival footage and dramatically advanced audio restorations from the 1920s and 1930s recordings. So that whole thing kind of pushed out this excitement with Robert Redford from their first meeting. And he said, this is like America's greatest untold story. Many music critics have cited that American epic films are as being one of the best music documentaries ever made. During production of this series, McMahon directed and co-wrote the American Epic Sessions, which was a documentary film with a sound engineer restored fabled long lost first electrical sound recording systems from 1925 and 20 contemporary artists paid tribute to the monumentous machine by attempting to record songs on it for the first time in 80 years. So in that film, he had people like Steve Martin, who we know is a wonderful banjo player.
Yes.
He recorded on that machine.
Oh,
Nas, Elton John,
wow.
Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, Alabama Shakes, Jack White, Taj
Ooh.
Mahal, Anna Gabriel, the
Hmm.
Avett Brothers, and Beck, and more. Okay, so this is a guy. I just wanted to give that kind of background on who this director is
Hmm.
and the level of his, resume with music documentaries. This
Yeah,
is
so we're dealing with a guy who knows how to preserve sound. He
yes.
is more than just a, you know, random documentary filter. He's a guy who understands recordings, sound recordings.
Yeah, he gets
Like,
it and he like
yeah,
really appreciates it.
yes, okay.
Um, what's very interesting too is so this film, and you and I kind of talked about this when we were in the film, like
Hmm.
watching it, right? Becoming Led Zeppelin, as it says in the title, is centering specifically on the beginning of their career. We don't get into any of the stuff that the band went through, drug addiction, alcoholism, the fights, the fallouts, the all that stuff. None of that is discussed. What's really discussed is the background of each of these four guys and how they come together and kind of the beginnings of their own musical careers, right?
Right. And yeah, so I had actually heard kind of through the grapevine that it was a lighter film. That while it was a documentary, and in documentaries, there's this big push in Hollywood to have some sort of gripping uh counter storyline, some big switcheroo in the end, like, and then somebody died, and that's how I made this album and all of this stuff. But a lot of times, the early years are when people are working the hardest just on music. They're just obsessed with making music, and you can, when you just quadruple your efforts, or you know five people working on the same thing super, super hard, you can make a lot of progress. I knew it was going to be, more about the beginning, but I guess I didn't really realize how
Yeah.
kind of like boxed in the years would be. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't interesting. It was great, but
No,
it
no,
was,
no,
yeah,
totally. So what's really interesting with this particular documentary being focused on the early part of their life in a musical way, right?
hmm,
That was actually the concept that Bernard MacMahon had with screenwriter and producer Allison Gordy. So the two together, basically, having worked on the American Epic project, which was huge,
yeah.
they approached Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, who were already fans of the series,
Oh,
and gave them a leather bound book, which was the storyboard for the series, where they had deeply researched some of the stuff about the band, chronicling the band's birth from 1968 and its early rise in this storyboard. And so these guys were like, wow, okay. They had been approached by other people before who wanted to do Led Zeppelin documentaries, and they had said no. But when these guys came to them and they were so obviously well prepared, well researched, knew exactly how they wanted to present it, knew exactly what they wanted to do, you know, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant are like, yeah, let's do it. Right. And I think you
yeah,
can tell more with this film than any other. Let's say it this way. Often with music documentaries, we're not necessarily always getting the artist's permission. You might get
yeah,
some permission, but the artist doesn't have as much, I think, leeway in saying like, show this or don't show this. But in the way that this documentary particularly is put together and being the background of the people who made this documentary and the way that they view music and have such a deep respect for it, you understand why this documentary, more than many documentaries I've seen, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, has so many moments where we're watching live band performances from early in their career. And they're
Yep.
not like a minute, it's like the full freaking song. And Led Zeppelin's got some long songs, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, we're watching them become Led Zeppelin. So, for those of you who are not musicians out there listening, it's just like any art. You work on it and you work on it, and it's all cumulative. It's a building process. So, the longer you play together, the more live shows you play together, you start developing a language as a band. Like, I mean, Aaron and I always talk about our uh, Guns N' Roses tribute band, Guns N' Hoses, because we've played together for so many years. And those very early years of that, we were figuring out sort of antics we did on stage. We were playing together and learning how the other sort of performs on stage. Now, 13 years later, I can give Aaron a look and we know what it means. It's like, let's get back to back. Somebody get on their knees. Somebody do a flying, high kick. Like,
Yeah.
let's give the audience something in this space right here. And you develop a language over time. So when it's something that's a band of original music, it's even more important. You are figuring out, you know, a language about what works best in all the sounds that you make together. When the audience is going crazy, let's make the solo long because the audience seems to go nuts during this part. Let's engage the audience in these parts. These are the years where they were making something so new and so exciting that they were in real time watching their audience react to this new thing that was happening, this new sound. And second point I want to make about this and the early years and picking a band in their early years as they are becoming a band is something happens to a band once they become famous. A certain kind of freedom goes out the window once you make it, meaning you're much more vulnerable. You have to play inside much stricter guidelines, whether it's because of your label, whether it's because of criticism, whether it's because people's opinions and tastes change. There's a moment in a band, a lightning in a bottle kind of moment. There can be several over the years, but generally in the beginning, when everybody's excited and they haven't become famous yet, they are creating without being self-conscious. It is a moment where everyone is just trying stuff without consequence and without knowing everything. And it can make magic happen.
Totally.
Sometimes,
It's,
yeah,
yeah, it's that incredible moment of like throwing the spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. What's
exactly.
also really cool to me watching this documentary, and I think that I would say for anybody who loves rock and roll, and if you like, I mean, there's so many, I'm talking about like big guitar driven bands. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you like Queens of the Stone Age, if you like Mars Volta, if you like the White Stripes, if you like so many bands where it's like very guitar centered, but at the same time can have some minimal aspects, you should do a deep dive into Led Zeppelin. What's so impressive to me about that band is that this is four guys. Often you'll see bands and it's like they've got three guitarists or they've got like somebody on keyboard and they got two guitarists and blah, blah, blah. This is only four guys. And the magic
Yeah.
of them coming together, they all knew exactly what their role was so well that there
Mm-hmm.
was no chance they weren't going to succeed. And
Yeah.
that's the part I think as an artist and as a musician, it's really important to remember that marketing and being good at your craft are very, 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 very important. And it's also just one of those things of like, who do you know? Okay. Because Jimmy Page So they started out as basically a replacement for the Yardbirds. When these guys came together, Jimmy Page had been touring with the Yardbirds, which is another great band people know. Jeff Beck, another famous huge guitarist in the rock world, was with them with the Yardbirds, like, screw this. But the Yardbirds had a tour already booked. And
Mm-hmm.
so Jimmy Page is like, uh, you know what? Let me just form like the new Yardbirds. So when
Mm-hmm.
Led Zeppelin first starts playing, they're like, yeah, we're the new Yardbirds, but they're not. And then they come up with a new name, but they take over those dates that the Yardbirds already had that had like a set audience who was already, ready to hear rock and roll, ready to hear something show up. And so that's why from their first inception in 1968, where they first meet for the first time and they come together and they start hanging out at, what was it? Was it Jimmy Page's house? They're like meeting up, or was it John Paul Jones?
I don't remember.
I can't remember, but they were at one of those guys' houses, rehearsing, practicing. They would be there, they would practice. I think it was Jimmy Page. Practice, 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 whatever, for hours, hang out. And then they play these shows. And because of the connections that Jimmy Page had, he had the ability, and this is a time when the Beatles had been everywhere. People are going crazy for the Beatles,
Mm-hmm.
the Rolling Stones. People are out there. There's like huge bands, and these guys from 1968, by the time we hit into 1970, they are the number one band in the world. Number one band in the world. And to
Crazy.
see that and kind of go,
Mm-hmm.
wow, man, let's just really focus on what exactly they did here. And you and I even talked about this when we were watching it, or like right after we saw this documentary. It's like
Yeah.
all those dudes were like session guys,
Yeah.
all of
So
them.
yeah. So
They're all,
Aaron brings up before, it shows to Goya that it's about who you know really. And that doesn't mean it's not about talent. It's just about being active in your scene and working all the time. That being said, Jimmy Page was a session guy jumping in and playing with all these bands for hire, bands that were already huge and
very well established. Yeah.
yes, and very well established. So he already had already proven his talent to, a series of producers and engineers and other musicians and studio heads and A&R people. And everybody already knew he was great. So there was, and the rest of them too, they were all regular players. They were playing nothing, not everyone was as sort of established as Jimmy was, but they were all out actively playing all the time.
Yeah. That's
And
all they did. Knew
yeah,
their instrument inside and out.
mm-hmm.
Not to interrupt you. I mean, I apologize.
No,
But
it's
yeah,
great.
I mean, absolutely. That's the thing. You want to be good at something that you eat it, you breathe it, you sleep it. That's the thing. That's all you do. That's
Yeah,
all these guys did.
yeah,
Even Robert Plant, which I found fascinating. Robert Plant has one of the most epic voices in rock and roll history.
yeah.
No denying that. Okay. Huge, huge, big voice. That guy was homeless when Led Zeppelin started. He was
So,
living out of a suitcase. He would show up for auditions, go do a little singing on this, do some singing on that, and, had a suitcase, and pretty much that's it. That guy's whole life changed.
yeah.
But he just
And
knew, I'm a singer. This is what I'm going to do. That's it. I can't do
yeah.
anything else.
Mm-hmm. That's yeah. And well, his parents kicked him out, right? Wasn't that the whole
Yes.
thing? Yeah, because they disapproved so much. They thought he was a crazy idiot for going into
Mhm.
music, and they really
Mhm.
didn't want him to do that, so he had nowhere to live. But yeah, I mean, I've heard it said a few times that it's probably a good idea to have a job when even though it's even when you're a musician, because it's information into the brain. That being said, when you're a session person,
Yeah.
if you can make money daily being a playing with people, even if it's like not very much and you can get by, that's how I've seen most of my friends who have made it make it. I feel like,
Yeah.
because because they yeah, they just keep playing. They get asked to play in other people's bands. And very rarely do I see have I seen four people make it all together the way this band did. So you have to remember, to audience, that it is a mix of preparedness,
Yeah.
willingness to take a shot, and just symbiotic timing. Like, a few things also that I will say is, there is something to be said for these guys being avant-garde. It is a huge risk to, and also kind of the only way to make it is to be a trailblazer, because most people are looking for something they've never seen before and never heard before. And if you try and recreate what's popular, it's going to be a losing game, because studios are already doing that. They're already recreating what's popular. So if you're going to be an independent artist and you're trying to make something all on your own that you want to have hit big, and you want somebody to want to buy it up, and support it and market it for you, you have to take a chance and be a trailblazer, do something nobody's seen before. And like, that's what they were doing. And we watch the audiences in this doc. Not all of them are reacting positively. Like, we got to watch audiences be confused by them for the first part of their career. They had
Yeah.
not heard anything like this. Now,
Yeah.
just imagine, it's, this I couldn't stop thinking about, like, independent emo scene and rock scenes in cities where you go to a club and it's like four guys on stage. There's no backing tracks filling up to pad sounds. There's not, multiple keyboard players. There's not,
Yeah.
like, this was raw, like Aaron was
Yeah.
saying, four people. They were holding up everything. And so part of what was so impressive about them was the sounds that they were pulling out of their instruments, singer included. They were
Mhm.
creating sort of a supersonic sound in a way that nobody had yet. It was looser, more experimental, more jarring, more distorted, broken up. Everything was pushed hard into the red. They were creating a lot of sound effects naturally.
Yeah.
Everything
And
was
I,
overdriven.
yeah, and I feel with the background that many of them had
Mhm.
in, blues,
Yes.
that they were able to create space for each other to have moments of being highlighted. So that's also why it was such an amazing sound, because you had someone like John Bonham, an amazing, amazing, amazing drummer,
Mhm.
and there's space in the songs for him. You can really tune into the drumming. It's
Mhm.
the same with the vocals. It's like Jimmy Page had made space on purpose for Robert Plant to be able to like jump in and have those epic moments vocally. If you
Mhm.
have one person who doesn't understand the ways that that type of music kind of flows and into each other with all of the ways that that kind of moves, if you don't get that, I don't think they would have had the ability to create and write songs like this for rock and roll, like heavy metal
Yep.
stuff,
I know what you're saying. It's sort of like, if you know the rules, you can break them.
Yeah. And for perspective too, I think we need to mention that like they are one of the best selling music artists of all time. Anyone currently can't touch them because nobody buys albums anymore, right? The industry has
Yeah.
changed so much.
Yeah, we
They're,
actually looked at each other and we were like, this would never
yeah,
happen.
it can't happen
It
today.
can't.
Just
Yeah.
can't.
Mm-mm.
They have an estimated record sales between 200 and 300 million units worldwide. They've achieved 8
Wow.
consecutive UK number one albums and 6 number one albums on the US Billboard 200, with 5 of their albums certified diamond in the US by the Recording Industry Association of America.
Mhm.
Rolling Stone described them as the heaviest band of all time. the biggest band of the 70s, and unquestionably one of the most enduring bands in rock history. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995. The museum's biography states that they were as influential in the 70s as the Beatles were in the 60s. So,
From a directorial perspective,
sure.
afterwards, Aaron and I both said we just felt like we saw a Led Zeppelin concert. We were like, that was like watching a Led Zeppelin concert for an hour and 45 minutes, which by the way, it was long.
Yeah.
And not every moment was filled with gripping facts. It was really about like if you want to see some live music, if you want to see the essence of Led Zeppelin, that's what this documentary is, you know? So many times in a documentary, it's not about just one period, like we said. And what was really nice about it was they were so young. It was footage captured from this like period of time in people's lives where they haven't really discovered the world yet. And so there's
Yeah.
like an innocence to all of them. They're like 20 years old. They look like babies. You know what I
They
mean?
really look like babies. They
Yeah.
really, really do.
And
Yeah.
they're wearing their little tiny pants and they're wearing their little tiny shirts and their little tiny hats. They're
Yeah.
so cute.
Yeah.
And I kept being like, dang, they're so good looking. Like, why? This is crazy. I like reverted to sort of a teenage girl sort of mentality as I was watching them. But also, I don't feel like Zeppelin was that celebrated in the light that they are in this movie. Like this felt very like indie rock. This was like the closest like the 70s indie rock. This was not power pop. This
Yeah.
was more experimental. They were doing such strange things sonically. And like Aaron was saying before, it's like they're so pro and they knew how to play with each other so much. I think they were like tickling each other on stage too, not actually like metaphorically tickling each other, like,
Yeah.
look what I can do. I'm going to make this amplifier feedback and make the most crazy fucking noises that I could possibly make.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to, play my guitar through this like weird
Yeah.
effect that no one's used to hearing. And
Yeah.
so they were like, you could tell they were giving each other a chuckle on stage too. Like, ha,
Well, what,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, but here's the one thing, and like I love everything you're saying.
yeah,
But as far as the documentary, do we know anything about who these guys are? There was like very minimalist information about like their own personal lives to a degree. Even the
yeah,
fact that like John Bonham, he died in 1980 and the band broke up after that. They're like, that's it, we're done. They
yeah,
never talked about how he died. It's never once mentioned. And he had a really pretty sad death.
yeah,
He basically died from pulmonary aspiration. He had gotten picked up by one of the managers. They were going to be recording or rehearsing for an upcoming tour. They, stopped at the side of the road, got breakfast. He had like four screwdrivers or something at breakfast. Then they get to the rehearsal space. He's like heavily drinking throughout rehearsal, just vodka, drinking, drinking, drinking. He had recently gotten off heroin. And then he, that night goes to sleep. They put him on his side because he had been throwing up. They woke up, he was dead. So they never talked about that in this documentary at all. Not that they had
yeah,
to, because this was about the beginning of
yeah,
them. And I thought they did
yeah,
a wonderful job with getting audio clips of him talking about the band in past interviews
yeah.
and pictures of him with his family and pictures of them talking about how they all got to know each other and really start to like each other. I thought that was great.
Yeah, because they said historically he never wanted to be interviewed. He like
Yes.
refused to do interviews.
Yes. But I think there is also that aspect of there's no dirt in this movie.
Yeah,
There's no dirty grimy side.
we all
It's all
admitted it was
this is
a,
what we did and we're
yeah,
really great studio musicians and we came
yeah,
together and we didn't really know each other, but we quickly became friends and we just took over the Yardboards tour. And, it was like very, very interesting,
Yeah.
but it was not vulnerable.
Yeah,
It was
no, not at all.
not vulnerable at all.
Yeah, and I think like there's a breed of people who don't want to see dark stuff. They want to just talk about like the glory times, and that's like a certain personality type.
Yeah,
And
the
maybe it,
English. No.
yeah, maybe that's part of what it is, honestly, because maybe they wouldn't agree to it if it was going to be sort of like a documentary with dirt in it.
Yeah,
But there's also like a watcher who enjoys just the glory times and they don't want to see the dark stuff. They don't like to think of a band in that way, or
yeah,
they're heroes in that way. My opinion on showing the whole gamut is that
yes,
dark stuff actually happens to people,
yes,
and we do our audiences a favor when we share that hard things actually happen, and we do our
yes,
audiences a favor when we show ourselves recovering from it, and we do our audiences a favor when we show that there are some things you can't recover from. And while it is depressing, I mean, that is what life is. You take the good with the bad,
yeah,
and you're telling a more complete story when you tell the truth about things. That being said, we got a little bored.
we got a little bored. We did.
So we got a little bored. So then let's get back to the vinyl record rating. So based on us getting a little bored, no dirt
Yes,
whatsoever,
yes.
listen, I loved it. What I don't know how to rate it when I'm, for excitement versus like for appreciation. If I was gonna tell like my neighbor who has no interest in music documentaries, I would probably say be prepared to enjoy it at a level 6 for a record vinyl rating. Is that low? You
No,
okay,
I
good.
was gonna say it's a 5. To
Yeah.
me, it felt like homework. It was,
It
you
felt
know,
like Hallmark? Oh,
no
well, I guess that.
homework, like
Oh,
homework. Like I'm reading a
homework.
book that I have to read for history class that I'm going to have a test on. It
Yeah,
was interesting, to
sure.
understand the dynamics of how they built the ship
Yeah.
that it became. It
Yep.
was interesting to understand how that house was built, the
Yeah.
structure. That was
But we
it.
don't but
Was
we
it
don't
cool
get
to
to
watch the
yeah.
footage? Yeah. But do I know anything really about these guys as people? They all seem very sweet, but
Yeah. We don't get to find out what happened in the house. We don't
that
get
doesn't mean jack to me,
to
like
Yeah.
it's not.
We don't get to find out how the house felt about anything.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's far from a VH1 behind the music. So if
Yeah.
you're looking for that type of info, you're just not going to find it here.
It
Is
seems
it
like a
archival? Yes. Is it factual from an archival standpoint? Yes. It's boring. I saw it. I'll never see it again. I have like full
no.
confidence I'm never going to watch that again. Um, and I really like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not about the band.
yeah,
It's just, it felt like homework to me. But
yeah,
if you want to know more about Led Zeppelin, definitely check it out. I think it's
yeah.
cool to watch it once, just like it's cool to have to read, the Scarlet Letter. So you know what it's about. And then you can just like do your book report and say you read it and move on with your life. You don't have to,
Yeah.
that's my personal take.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, I would put it on in the background when I was cleaning the house just to listen to the jams.
Yeah, but then just
Maybe.
put the record on.
Right, that's true.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know, but like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
I think maybe I'd watch it again only because like without expectations, I could maybe enjoy the learning from the listening, like musically, like from a music producing standpoint. I could be like, oh, that's crazy what they did there. And that's sort of what
yes,
it is. And that's what's different about it. Like this to me is a documentary that's for fans or trying to convert fans of
yes.
it. Yeah. So music lovers that like and maybe because it seems like a vehicle for which to get an audience to fall in love with a band again.
Yeah. And
So
have an
that yeah,
appreciation for what they did, which was a
yeah,
lot, you know?
yeah,
I think a lot of people wouldn't be playing the way that they play if Led Zeppelin hadn't happened.
yeah. I
So,
mean, think about it. Like this would be about like the beginning moments when Tra La La got together, or when I first learned to record. It would be like
yeah.
from this moment in time where you get to see like you're having like the most fucking fun you've ever had in your whole life.
Yeah. I
Do
mean,
you know what I
I didn't really
mean?
have a lot of fun with some of my
Tra
bands,
La
but
La.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like
You
that's
learn, you
probably why they
learn.
made it because those guys are like, we don't want to do anything else that isn't like totally fun to like relive. And so
Yeah.
that's
And
sort of the old guy, that's sort of the old guy spirit that's in the movie. Do
I
you know what I
think,
mean?
yeah,
So
and
it
I
makes it a
think
little
there is
boring.
something about the fact that they broke up after John Bonham passed away. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a deeper thing there. I think probably a huge mountain of sadness.
Yeah.
Um, and I, actually kind of think it's nice that they didn't keep going after his
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, well, it was always, and it is always a pleasure to talk to you, Emmy. I love these episodes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I went, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, yeah.
No,
Uh,
I love it too. I'm glad we went and saw a music doc. It's not as fun to recount a music doc because it's not, especially this one, because it wasn't like a bunch of hard-hitting points we could talk about. It was really just
totally.
about the sounds, but this is the video and vinyl
It
plus.
is. It
And
is. And
so
this
we
was a
we were
perfect,
due. We were
we were
due.
definitely due. And we
Yeah.
just want to give the audience updates on our John Waters series. So we are going to still do Pink Flamingos. If you want to watch Pink Flamingos and talk about it with us, it is pretty much from our own research only available on DVD. You can't rent it, you can't stream it unless you know something we don't know, and then you can tell us what we don't know about how we could watch this another way. But we will be still talking about it and we will still have an episode about it, but you still have time to figure out how you can get your DVD copy of it and watch it because we're just going to have to push that episode back a little bit. So you still got some time.
I feel
And
like
I,
the John Waters episode should be like it never ends. Like every now and
yeah,
then we
we'll just
watch
keep popping
another
them in.
John Waters movie.
Totally. We'll just keep popping them in. There's so
Yeah.
many to enjoy.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a film you can easily find online if you'd like to watch it before the episode. You can watch it on YouTube if you have a premium subscription, Amazon Prime. It's on Google Play and Movies. It's on Apple TV. And it's also on Roku. And apparently it's everywhere. So that film is
Cry baby.
Right Baby with Johnny Depp.
Cry.
So this is Johnny Depp at 26 years old when the film hit the theaters. At the time, he was best known for Nightmare on Elm Street and
Such a
21 Jump
good show.
Street.
Such a
And
good
Edward
show.
Scissorhands wouldn't hit
Yes.
the theaters for 9 months after this came out. So this is
Wow.
the purest Johnny Depp of that moment. Beautiful faced Johnny Depp with the cute little hair.
I
So
look forward.
tune in, watch it. We're going to be watching it and get yourself a copy of Pink Flamingos or figure out how you can find it. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for your support. Love ya.
Fire and love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
1, 2.